Alrighty, it's that time again. As you can see, we hit 251,000 views. Steve, welcome to The Varied Life. I'm the retired hobby tech guy who sold everything in the United States, lock, stock, barrel, everything, including the kitchen junk drawer. All of that went. And there was so many keys in that junk drawer, it was crazy. Where did all those keys come from and what do they unlock? I have no clue. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about something because I'm looking for a plan B, and you might be looking for a retirement destination, a plan A, but you should also have a plan B. So with that, I've been scouring the interwebs and chatting with people and looking at different countries, the income requirements for retirement overseas. Some countries, their requirements are pretty low along with their income and their deposits, and some of them used to be low and their income requirements were kind of good for people on Social Security, maybe a little bit more. But the new My Malaysia Second Home requirements shake up for retirees. Yeah, this is a shake up, and the question is, can you afford it now? We've talked about this before, but some people were interested, wanted to see some information that I found, because again, Malaysia is a possible plan B for me. So if you want to leave some comments, try to stick to the topic we're doing. And if you've got other comments about other stuff, or maybe me being retired in Korea, some of those questions, you can leave that towards the end. We'll do a Q&A. But with that, yeah, I can see your comments, and we can post them up here. We can have a discussion and kind of dive into this. This is kind of interesting because the My Malaysia Second Home offers a retirement program where there's usually a deposit, there's an income requirement of, lifetime income or money that you have to make. And then, of course, you have to have a clean background check, no drug dealers, no cartel members. And your medical health usually comes into play, so that you're fairly healthy and you're not a criminal. So with that, I've been looking at My Malaysian Second Home. This was a good program because a while back, and I want to say it was about a year ago, that the income requirements were not that bad. And there was people that had retired in Malaysia on the federal program. There's a federal program, and then there's a Sarawak program, which is like its own state within Malaysia. They have their own separate program. But the federal program, what they ended up doing is raising the income. Holy crow, they rose the income, and they just kind of priced so many people out of it, and then they adjusted it. So we're going to take a look at the federal program first. So let's take a look at this. Savoy & Partners, I'm not associated with them at all, but they have good information, and instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, they had it in a format that was similar to what I would do. So I was like, hey, I'll just use theirs. So thank you, Savoy & Partners, for putting this out there. On March 13th, the Malaysia My Second Home program generates $102 million after the revamp. Yeah, they raised their income requirements to like $8,000 a month. And so they're scratching their heads. How come nobody's really wanting to do this? Well, it's too darn expensive. It rebounded strongly following its 2024 revamp. And before that, again, what they ended up doing is around $1,200 or $1,500 a month, and then there was some type of deposit, and then it just went to the other extreme, to being really affordable, to being super expensive. And again, it left him wondering why aren't there a lot of people doing this? You priced yourself out of the market. They don't perceive that much value as what you think it is. It's a two-way street. So basically, it talks about the different things and the economic contributions during this period from 2002, between June and December of 2024, 233 million, whatever their currency is. Okay. Excuse me for not knowing. But the revamp program, what they ended up doing, because it was so overpriced that they didn't get a lot of takers. So now they put it up into a tiered system. So silver tier requires $150,000 fixed deposit, property purchase of at least 600,000, and if we look at about 500,000 of the Malaysian ringgit, you're looking at about over $117,000. So add on some more, it's probably going to be 120, 130,000, somewhere around there, and an offshore income of 10,000 ringgit. So if we look at that, that's about 2350. So yeah, that's a significant increase. And this tier saw the highest uptake in 260 principal approvals. In other words, 260 applications were approved of people who applied for it, which is a lot better than, not 100% better, but their old program where they raised the income limit up to it was like $8,000. It was, I think it was under 300. So yeah, they thought they were going to make big bank on this, but they didn't. Then there's the gold tier, which entails a $500,000 U.S. deposit, $500,000. I would say for the average person who's getting ready to retire, you maybe have $1 million. If you look at people that are on Social Security, you're probably not going to have 500K. Over here in Korea, when we came here to retire, we had paid off our house in the United States. We sold it. We got tax-free profits, and then we were able to buy this 4-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in a nice place. It is nice. And that was like $250,000. So, and our savings after that, it was kind of low. So with that, we're still able to save money. You can check out my budget video on how much we pay for our expenses and all that stuff for the average month. But you're looking at a 1 million ringgit property purchase and 40,000 monthly offshore income. Now, 40,000, you're looking again, $9,400 US dollars. That is kind of crazy. I mean, wow. So they went back, they still included that high $8,000 income along with $500,000 deposit just so that you can live in Malaysia in the federal program. And then there's the platinum tier, requires $1 million deposit, 2 million ringgit property purchase, and 100,000. 100,000 is $23,000 a month. With 7 principal approvals. So in other words, you could have 7 people. I just don't really understand it. If you offer these systems, the silver, the gold, and the platinum, and if I made a ton of money, why would I want to put $1 million US dollars in a deposit? And even if I had a high monthly income of 100,000, which is $23,000, why would I do that? If I could get in for 150,000 and $10,000, $2,300, why would I purchase that tier? The facts are right here. They saw 260 applicants get approved. And the gold one, they had 9 applicants approved, and this one they had 7. So it really it boggles the mind if I was such a high income person and I had $1 million just to throw into a deposit in the Philippines, or not the Philippines, we'll talk about the Philippines, but into Malaysia, and buy a 2 million ringgit property and have that much income coming in every month that I have to do. Why would I there were 7 principal approvals. Why would you do that? Unless, that just boggles the mind. That just shows you, I've been trying to rack my brain as to why someone would pick the platinum tier versus the silver tier. Because you're still getting access, you're not limited to buying a property that's a lower price with this or this, but I just don't get it. I just don't understand. Maybe I'm just too simple. I'm just not seeing things. There's other special economic and financial zones, offers reduced requirements, including 500,000 fixed deposit with no mandatory offshore income resulting in 43 approvals. It's kind of like the business investment into a country or authorized businesses. So yeah, there's 43 of those approvals. So yeah, a lot of different changes have came up with that. But seriously, when you're looking at $150,000 deposit and property purchase of at least 600,000, so again, we're looking at, let's just throw in the six there and see what that comes out to. 120, 140, so about $140,000. Why? $140,000. That's not bad for a purchase, but $150,000 for a fixed deposit, and then the income of basically $2,400. I think they're losing out on some people, and but that's just me. I don't know. They can do whatever they want. Who cares about what I think? But before, this price was significantly lower. And then with that, people were scrambling because they're like, okay, the people that are already retired there in Malaysia, what they were going to do, hey, are they going to kick us out? There's people that had been there for 10, 15 years or more, and they're like, oh my gosh, I've worked in Malaysia and I'm retired. I have a house, car, family, the whole nine yards. Kids have never been outside of Malaysia, and now because I'm a retiree, are they going to kick me out because of these new income requirements and new deposit amounts? Well, the interesting thing is that they were grandfathered in, which is a lot of people. There's some folks on YouTube that I chatted with that were really, really worried. But they were under the old system that was like $1,200 or $1,300 a month for income on that requirement. So they were grandfathered in. So they were sweating bullets, and then they made a huge sigh of relief. But those things can happen. And just because they were grandfathered in doesn't mean that other countries or even Malaysia will honor that in the future. There can be an upset in the immigration where they change the laws, and it's like, well, yeah, you're no longer grandfathered in. You got to go. Bye, unless you can come up and meet these requirements. But most countries are flexible and they grandfather people in. But it's not a guarantee that they all will. So yeah, the three-tier system is interesting, and with that, there was a number of people that had brought up, and I had found out that Sarawak, which is on the island of Borneo in Malaysia, it's like their own state within Malaysia, and they have their own Sarawak, My Malaysia Second Home, and they had their own requirements. So people were like, hey, this place over here, which is nice and safe, and it has its own requirements, but they are much lower. So that was kind of a thing there. And then, yeah, they did some moving around of some things. Sarawak updates its MM2H program criteria amid growing demand, and the MM2H. So if you want to look up for information, kind of use that. Responding to the rising rate of foreign applicants and growing need for more screening. The program operates independently from the federal program. Sarawak approved 542 applications in 2023, up from an average of 89 in just 2007 and 2020. Last year, 560 applications were received. Many applicants plan to relocate with their families to East Malaysia. Excuse me. What's changed under the 2025? The financial requirements have a fixed deposit of $500,000. So in case you didn't, it's almost $120,000 for the deposit. A purchase of property of at least $600,000, which we took a look at, which is about $140,000. Oh, let's go back here, and this deposit covers the applicant, their spouse, their dependents as a family unit. So I like that. When you start getting to the place if you're putting additional things on there because of family, again, it depends on how much money and your income and can you take care of them. And Philippines has a thing like that as well. Proof of financial stability, monthly offshore income of 10,000 ringgit, which again is like $2,300. So they even raised it higher. Or 15,000 as a couple, which is $3,500. So yeah, it's been a significant increase in this, and then have a savings of 100,000 for individual or 200,000 for a couple, and 200,000 is almost $50,000. So, yeah, applicants must be at least 30 years old and citizen of countries with diplomatic relations to Malaysia. This is kind of good. This is different because most countries have where you need to be 50 years old or older. The age requirement is higher, but this one has actually takes people that are 30 years old and citizens of other countries. So 30 years old and older, which kind of opens up the availability or the pool of people of which can apply for this type of visa. Again, you're going to have your health and your background investigation to make sure that you're not a criminal and that you don't have any crazy diseases that they don't want, and so on and so forth. But the interesting thing here, as I called it, is that a lot of different countries are seeing the need and they're seeing the popularity of retirees and people who want to retire, and they're doing so overseas. So they're seeing this and they're saying, well, there's a big demand for this. Boom, we're going to strike and we're going to make money off of this. And Malaysia, the federal program, raised it to ridiculous levels, and now it's kind of gotten down, but it's still a significant increase for overseas retirement. So yeah, very interesting stuff, and we kind of called this a while back, and interesting news. With that being said, there's other countries that have adjusted their retirement visas as well, and one of those was actually the Philippines. So when we take a look at the Philippines, and actually what I ended up doing, if you go to the link down here for my Buy Me Coffee link, you'll see this page here, and then if you go to shop, what you'll end up seeing is a guide that I produced. I did a video, so all the information is free, but if you want to download this as a PDF file, you can go ahead and get this, and it is a PDF so that you have something in your hot little hands that you can refer to. Some people had asked about that, if I could make a PDF. For the price of a cup of coffee, you can get that. But with that, what ends up happening is that the Philippines used to have a couple of different programs, and they've revamped theirs as well. So they used to have like the Smile program. They used to have the Human Touch visa for people that would need assisted living and medical care. They had a special visa for that. They got rid of the Smile program. They got rid of the Human Touch, and now they just have their classic and their courtesy / expanded courtesy visas, which if you're a military veteran, check out the expanded courtesy visa. And I, in the video I did the Philippines, where I go over this exact same information. So again, it's available for free, but they revamped and updated their thing. When I look in my crystal ball, the Philippines is eventually going to raise its prices. It's going to raise the income requirement. It's going to raise the deposit amount. With like all of these other countries are catching on and they're getting a clue, and it's like, oh, really? We can make more money? But, they're looking at the numbers. So it's almost like countries before were looking up information, and let me just do this right here, because we're talking about the Philippines. We'll just put that in there. And can you afford it? Philippines. But basically countries, what they ended up doing is like the retiree overseas, let's bring people and have them retire here and spend money, was just kind of like it was like a side quest in a video game. It was kind of like, yeah, we do it. Here's some things. Yeah, you make $1,000 a month or whatever. You're in good health. You don't have a criminal background. Come on, and yeah, you can do that. And they made money with that because people are spending their retirement checks. They're buying housing, or they're renting, they're paying utilities, they're buying food, they're getting medical care, they're retiring, they're living. And usually the income that they bring with their monthly income is generally a lot higher than what the average income is for that country. So in other words, it's really a kind of a big deal. But with that, now there's a demand for this because people are seeing that they can't retire in the United States, or if you're in Australia or UK or New Zealand or other places, they're finding out that, wow, we can dip our toe and put our finger in the pie, and we can make a little bit more money than we were before. And that's exactly what My Malaysia Second Home did on the federal program. And then they priced extremed, and then they kind of circled back and came back and made it a tiered system, which doesn't make sense. If you make a ton of money, why would you go for the top tier and pay more money? Doesn't make sense to me. But they're thinking about it. They're not thinking it through clearly, as if somebody super rich with a high income is automatically going to go for the platinum tier program. No, if you're smart, you're going to go for the lowest tier that requires the minimal amount of money and deposit to be able to retire, unless you're just kind of stupid. I don't know. That's just me. But with the Philippines is going to raise their prices. I almost guarantee it. As these other countries, other ones are going to be looking and saying, hey, look at how many hundreds of millions of US dollars that they made for their economy and their country and their government and taxes and the whole nine yards. Even if they don't tax your funds, they're going to look at this and they're going to say, hey, we can charge a little bit more. And just like with anything else, it's a good deal. And then there's so much demand that finally somebody says, why am I selling this for such a low price? I can raise my prices and still make good money. So there just needs to be that market research to find out, where can we put the income requirement and the deposit amount so that we don't price ourselves out of the market, but we still get a lion's share of good individuals or retirees, people who want to come to our country. So there's got to be that fine line that they need to figure out. But I think the Philippines is going to raise their requirements. When we see other countries like Malaysia, because Philippines is part of Asia, Malaysia is kind of like right next door, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, there's other countries that do have income requirements that are like $1,000 or $800. There's a lot of those countries that are still around. But the draw for the Philippines is really nice, is that English is widely spoken. So that is a big draw for people for the United States, Australia, UK, even New Zealand, and so on and so forth. Philippines is looking really, really good. So they're going to start seeing, hey, look at all these people that want to retire overseas. That will help fund and build new retirement areas, new assisted living facilities. Again, this is going to be a huge boon for the Philippines, and they're going to see that they can make more money than what they're doing now. So yeah, we got that going on. A lot of interesting stuff. So Malaysia, again, the reason I was looking into this was the fact that I wanted to do a plan B. But with the Sarawak was the one that I was looking at because the federal one is just too much. I don't know. The level for investments and stuff like that, I don't know. I really don't know about that. What was the proof of stability, age requirements, demographics, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. Anyway, the requirements for that just seemed kind of interesting. And since they've risen or raised their income and their deposit amounts, I don't know if that's going to be good enough. That's kind of like out of the range for me for being a backup plan. Now, for many people, it could be totally acceptable. Be like, hey, $2,300 a month, that's not a big problem. $2,500, $3,500, that is absolutely doable. We love Malaysia, whatever it is. Some people don't, that's fine. So that could be a good thing for people. But for the situation that we're in, we're already retired here in Korea. And, excuse me, we're already here in Korea. So the interesting thing about that is we're looking for a plan B. And the plan B that we're looking at is just some other place. There's something else I wanted to show you. If I've got it, do I have it here? I was recently featured in, me and my wife were recently featured, oh, here it is. Or no, is that it? Yes, here it is. Yay! We'll go ahead and we'll open this up. We were recently featured in Business Insider. Business Insider did an article with us, And I guess we can just do a little screen share here. Might as well. Let's see if we can get this to work. Nope, it's not that one. It's this one. Imagine that. So here we are. U.S. Army vet, thought he'd work into his 70s. Moved to South Korea, gave him the freedom to retire in his 50s, which is absolutely true. Actually, I was about 54 is when we retired, and I'm going to be 59 here real darn quick. So yeah, Amanda Go did the article. We had a good interview. It was a lot of follow-up questions and discussions. So she's a really sweet person. But basically, it went through all of this information, background about us. We looked at crime rates, real estate, expenses, healthcare, and all of those things. There's me and the wife in the traditional Korean dress when we were up in Seoul by Gyeongbuk Palace. That was kind of a thing. And, apartment hunting. There's a picture of our apartment. We got a new couch, by the way. It is very much bigger and way more comfortable. So we're really happy with our couch. And then there's our kitchen. We just did the cabinets were all resurfaced. Everything is pretty nice. The wife likes that, so happy wife, happy life. And we're going to get a new refrigerator here pretty soon because that one's like 9 years old. She wants to get something a little bit more updated, a little bit more classy and better looking, and of course more energy efficient. So with this, the article is pretty cool. We got a slower and a fuller life. It talks about some of my hobbies of making models and learning how to paint miniatures and things like that. The Business Insider article was pretty cool. With that being said, again, retiring overseas, we're looking at the Philippines as being our plan B. And the reason is there can be a bunch of reasons for having a plan B. So, for example, one good example of this is the people who retired in Thailand. Thailand is going through some problems because Thailand is not like the Thailand like we used to know. A long time ago, we had been to Bangkok, we had been to Phuket, we did a little bit of traveling, and it had that Thailand vibe. The land of smiles, the people are wonderful. The people in Thailand are still wonderful. But the problem is with the advent of social media and influencers and then a bunch of people retiring and other world events, Thailand in some places doesn't even look like Thailand anymore. And then so you have a number of other people from other countries that have flooded Thailand in certain places. There's places in Thailand like Pattaya and others where you walk down the street and you would swear you're in some city in India that is just over flooded with Indian people in Indian stores and restaurants and so on and so forth. That just kind of lost. It's like you look around, it's like, where's Thailand? And then the cultural differences. And then the Ukraine war popped up, and then Russians who didn't want to be conscripted into the military for that war in Ukraine, they went to Thailand. They went to a number of other countries, and especially Phuket. It's all, people have called it Little Russia, and it's no longer Phuket, Thailand, it's Little Russia. And, when you go someplace to another overseas country, unfortunately, some people don't behave like they're a guest of that country. They're not going to be respectful. They're not going to be polite. And that's some of the problems that we're seeing in Thailand. And then you throw on some of the other problems where people, Westerners, who have authorized, lawful, legal visas from the Thai government, like digital nomads, long-term visa holders, and so on and so forth, and they open bank accounts in Thailand, their accounts are being frozen. Their accounts are being closed, and they can't pay their bills. They can't pay their rent, their mortgage, or whatever it is. And they're like, because there's this disconnect between the banks and immigration and the government. Government says, well, you're authorized, you as an individual are authorized to live in Thailand and do all this cool stuff and be a digital nomad or a long-term visa and retire here. But then the banks look at it and they say, well, this isn't a proper work permit, so we can't allow you to have a bank account. It's a knee-jerk reaction, and it doesn't really make sense if the Thai government says, hey, you're allowed to live here and work here because you meet the income and deposit requirements and the background checks and medical checks. to be a foreign resident here, but the banks say, no, we're not going to let you open a bank account, or we're going to close your account. Nobody has time for that. Nobody has time for that craziness. And then it's even compounded more with the fact that people that are trying to extend their visas are finding out that this immigration office says one thing, this one says the other. There's even people within the same office are saying two totally different things. Renewals are getting worse from some people that I chatted with, and there's a lot of people that are just like, Thailand isn't Thailand anymore, having problems with banking and paying bills and rent and so on and so forth, and trying to renew or deal with immigration. It's not worth the frustration. So people are popping smoke and going to other countries and looking for that plan B. Thing is, they're scrambling to find a plan B when they should have had a plan B figured out beforehand. And that's where we come in. That's my thinking, is to have a backup plan and a backup visa before you actually need it. And you can say, well, you live in Korea and you're protected by the Korean government and the military, and the U.S. military's there. It's really safe. And that doesn't mean the guy up north is not going to do stupid at one point in time. There could be military aggressions that pop up. There could be a natural disaster. There could be a change in the political climate here in Korea. There could be just a change in, like we said, the immigration policies, to where it could be we thought we were safe and secure, but if they change the immigration laws because of some knee-jerk reaction for whatever, we could find ourselves saying, hey, we need to go somewhere else. So I'd rather be a little bit proactive, and I think the Philippines is going to be the place that we're going to apply. One, because it has such a small deposit, especially if you're a military veteran. We talked about that. Matter of fact, within the, let me see if I can bring this up. Can I? I think I can. Yes. Oh, stop that. My computer's doing things that I don't want it to do. Let's just bring this. Let's just look at this. Might as well. You're here. I'm here. So here's what we end up seeing is with this PDF file that I made for seniors, benefits, ages, pension, no pension, veterans, and so on and so forth. Yeah, there's a little stuff about us, or it is. Contents. There's different types of visas. There's the classic, and it shows some deposit amounts and things like that. The courtesy visa, and then an expanded courtesy visa. You have to be 50 years old and receive a monthly pension of at least $1,000. And that pension can be from either a military pension or it could be Social Security, VA disability, a state pension, private company, as long as it's a lifetime pension. And that is kind of the interesting thing there, is that the deposits are like $1,500. So with a $1,500 deposit, if you're a veteran, and it's not just a United States veteran, you have to serve a minimum of 2 years, have an honorable discharge, or you could be a retiree like myself. The deposit is only $1,500. The income requirement is like $1,000, and the application is like $1,400. That is an incredible deal. Compare that to Malaysia, my second home program, which the deposits are way out of what I want to pay as a backup visa. It just doesn't meet my requirements. Now, maybe it meets the requirements of other people, but from our point of view, Malaysia just doesn't look like a good fit for us because it's just too expensive. We have a budget, we have some standards for our own personal. Not saying that your standards are bad or immoral or worse or whatever. It's just what we're comfortable with. But I think that the Philippines is a good place for a backup retirement plan. And heck, it could even be a great primary plan for those of you in the United States or Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, UK, all of those places for the Philippines retirement for that expanded courtesy visa. That's applicable to you. You can do that. It's not just U.S. veterans. And I've had some people contact me and said, yeah, I wish I could go to the Philippines. I served when I was in England, and I'm from England or whatever. It's like, oh, if you served and you got a minimum of 2 years and you can get that certificate of military service with an honorable discharge, you meet that requirement. if you served in the military in any of the countries that I just mentioned, guess what? You can go to the Philippines and take advantage of that low deposit and that income, and you would be able to retire. So yeah, there's some people that contact me that were like, "Wow, I didn't know that. Nobody ever explained that." So hats off to the people who served not only in the United States but other countries in helping them retire when before they didn't think they could retire. That's huge. That is a huge thing. And again, all this information is free. I've got videos on this, but again, that PDF that is on the Buy Me Coffee under the shop page, if it's the exact same information. The video, we actually go over some more information. So you combine those two things, it's definitely worth a cup of coffee. So for the people that were wondering about Malaysia, the federal program or the Sarawak version, prices, income requirements have risen, and I think we're going to see the same thing with the Philippines. So yeah, some pretty interesting stuff that we see coming on the horizon, and I think it's going to come to the point of where, yeah, we're definitely going to go with the Philippines one, which we're going to have to travel, and like in the PDF that I just mentioned, it's going to take about 1 to 2 months to get that approval, and you have to submit the paperwork there in the Philippines. So plan on taking a 1 or 2 month vacation in the Philippines and travel around as you're waiting for that visa, the SSRV. Boom. Just make a trip out of it. And with that traveling around for 1 or 2 months, go to the beaches, go to El Nido, go to Palawan, go to Boracay, go to all the different places and do the tourist thing. But then you can also go to places where there's high concentration of expats and where they've got what they want. You're not living out in the sticks, but you've got some amenities, you've got some lower priced income properties, rental properties that you can choose from. It's just a lot of different options. Beach, mountain country, city life, the whole 9 yards. You can get pretty much all of that within the Philippines. Granted, it's a little hotter. It's a little more tropical in the Philippines. And you'll have to put up with that. But they do have some mountain regions that are cooler. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to get this information out there and what I found and kind of check that off as another country that I'm checking out as a backup plan. Currently, Philippines looks like our backup plan, but it could be your primary plan, or heck, Malaysia could be your primary plan. It all depends on where you want to go, fit in, vibe, and be content. I've had people leave comments on my videos talking about, why would you ever want to go to Malaysia? It's all blah, 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 blah. And it's like, then don't. You don't need to. Some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla, some people like strawberry. If you don't like it, move somewhere, find a country that you enjoy, where you're content and happy, and you can live out your golden years. But the great thing about today in 2025 is that you're not limited to settling down in one place and being locked in. You can go to a lot of different countries. We might get to a place of where we say Korea is, we're bored of Korea, we're tired of it, we want to change a pace. We're going to go to the Philippines, or we could go to Bali. Bali's another consideration. Probably wouldn't want to retire there, but some people have, and so we're going to be taking a look and dive into the requirements for that as well. A lot of different places. So don't, just because you don't like it doesn't mean somebody else won't. And again, there's pros and cons to everything, but just showing the information and showing people the possibilities of overseas retirement. When people thought that they wouldn't be able to retire at all with like Social Security or whatever pension that they have, that they couldn't do it in the United States, you might be able to do that overseas. And yeah, you'll have to make some compromises, but I think it's good to be able to have those options and see, hey, you might find a new life and you might really enjoy being retired overseas. Or you might not. There's people that have actually retired overseas, people that have come here to Korea that did it for a year or two and are like, you know what, it was great, but we're going to go back to the States, or we're going to try some other country. And that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's, you need to find what's good for you and your family. And I'm not going to tell you, oh, you need to stay, or I don't know why you did that, or why you went to this country, Korea's the best. No, I'm not going to say that. We all have our own choices that we have to live with. Let's see. Terry Lay says, have you thought about Guam or Saipan? They're both U.S. territories and don't have visa or pay any deposits. Guam has a VA hospital, also a VA hospital in Manila. Yes. Philippines does have a VA hospital. That was another thing that I was looking at, and another draw for the Philippines. As far as Guam is pretty expensive, kind of akin to Hawaii, and we lived on Oahu for a year. Everything has to be shipped into Guam. So, yeah, pretty expensive. Real estate is expensive. Probably not as expensive as Oahu because that's an international, Waikiki tourist retirement destination. It's just housing is insane. But Guam, I think we would visit Guam, maybe. But just that small little island, and then one tsunami or one, they have a lot of storms. They get hit with a lot of natural disasters. And if you just do a cursory search of disasters in Guam, usually it involves storms and tsunamis and things like that. And I don't know if I have time for that. I don't know if I have the patience for that. It's to me, it's akin to living in Tornado Alley in the United States, retiring in Tornado Alley. Yeah, just people do it, but I just don't want to do that. But it's good that they have a VA clinic there. Philippines has a VA clinic, like you said, in Manila, so that's kind of a good thing as well. Ferthus says a lot of people still nowadays in the U.S. have hardly left their zip code, let alone the continent. They just cannot imagine immigrating to another country. That's true. That is absolutely true. There's people that I know and knew that I met while working in Colorado that were born and raised in the same town and never, Colorado Springs is like an hour away from this place where we used to live in Canyon City, Colorado. There's old people there that never left, never went to Colorado Springs, never went to Denver, which is 4 hours away. Never went to Pueblo, Colorado, which is like 35, 40 minutes away from Canyon City. So, yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. But then that's okay. But with that, on the other side of the coin, when you go to other countries, I think it widens your worldview, and you get a perspective that, hey, they do things different, but it's kind of cool over here, or I didn't know places could be this nice, or, whatever it is. I think if you're more well-traveled, you're a more well-adjusted adult. And especially if you do it as a child and you experience that earlier on, that definitely helps you later on in life because you're more open to the world. So, but there's a lot of people that haven't left their hometown, or, they're raised, did their schooling, work, and they're retired and they died in that same zip code and never went anywhere. And if they're happy and content, then that's cool. But at least take one trip. See a little bit of the world. I don't know. That's just me. So anyway, that's what we got going on. Other countries to take a look at. I don't know. Maybe Cambodia. But then again, Cambodia has some inexpensive. It's really inexpensive. But then again, there's that trade-off. If it's less expensive, there's usually not a lot of infrastructure there. So, you got to balance, especially as being a senior. You want to have good medical. You want to be close to airports. You want to be able to have good walkability. You want to have assisted living, care eventually. I plan on living till I'm 85 and then die in my sleep with my wife. We're just going to go together and we'll be done while we're healthy. I don't want to do that stroke wheelchair, knurled up type thing and then have that go on for 10, 15 years and then pass away. That would just be horrible. But we have no control over that, do we? But with that, with the end of life stuff, we need to take those things into consideration. And then we need to look at, is your insurance going to cover all of those things? We have TRICARE Overseas Select because I'm a military retiree. So, can I use that in the countries that we're looking at? The biggest thing is probably the medical care, shopping, things like that. Those conveniences that, yeah, you can live and traipse all over the world, but as you get older, eventually your veracity for life is going to wane a little bit, and you're not going to go as many places, you're not going to walk as much, and things happen. And so I think, looking at that, that's something to take into consideration. So some good stuff. But we've been enjoying our retirement here in Korea. We've been here just over 2.5 years. We spent a lot of other years in Korea, so we were different than most people, because when we decided to retire and that we could get visas here in Korea because of the wife's ancestry, we kind of knew the areas that we wanted to live in. We already knew that we wanted to buy an apartment, and we had already spent enough time in Korea that we knew we didn't want to be in Seoul. We wanted to be close to a military base. So we had these things that kind of narrowed down the area of what we wanted. We're pretty sure we're going to buy an apartment. And we did. That's what we're sitting in now. And we're thinking about buying another one as an investment property. But for the majority of people that aren't like us, strange and unusual, I would recommend coming to Korea, renting, getting your F1 and F4 visa prior to coming to Korea, so that way you can open bank accounts. You don't have to wait around for a month or two to get your Korean resident card. It used to be called your ARC card, alien registration card, but alien is considered offensive these days, I guess. You can go rent around and find different places. So... Oh, I got some more comments. Sorry about that. Terry ends up says, Ferrithus says, Terry, Guam is also the first place you will get shot at if China relationship ever goes down the drain completely. That's possible. Korea might be a bad place to be in. Of course, there's a lot of other countries where if things popped off, they could all be bad. Let's see. John Hutchinson pops up. How's the medical situation there? Are you having any problems being seen? That's a good question, John. It ends up, we got here, and medical care has been really good. Excuse me. And we go to Korean hospitals. Retirees can be seen on the military base as a standby basis. You call and you try to get a same-day appointment. I spent 2.5, almost 3 weeks trying to get an appointment, never did. So, we kind of relegated that. Unless it's an emergency, we're going to go to a Korean hospital. Generally, they've been pretty good. Some hospitals are better than others, just like in every other country of the world. TRICARE Overseas Select, we go to hospitals that will process that paperwork for us, so we don't have to submit documents. We just go, get seen, we do our little copay thing, and boom, we're done. Really good care at Samsung Medical Center, even at Good Morning Hospital in Pyeongtaek, which is close by. And then if we have something like a cough or a sniffle, a little flu thing, we'll go see a local clinic and we'll just pay out of pocket because it's so inexpensive. So medical care is really good. Then came the doctor strike. So the doctor strike, it was all a political thing. The Korean Medical Association, we're going into rant mode here, people. So just take a sip of your coffee and just listen and, throw in some comments. But then there was the doctor strike. So about anywhere from 9 to 10, 12,000 resident doctors went on strike at the behest of the Korean Medical Association, the doctors union. And it was all political. It was a political thing. And the Korean government said, hey, we want 5,000 more doctors in Korea because we have a super aging population. The amount of doctors in Korea hasn't increased for the last 27 years. I kid you not. And we're going to go on strike because we don't like the president. We don't want the government to put more doctors in rural areas. And really, you have 100 teaching hospitals in Korea, so it would be less than one additional doctor per department. So it's insignificant. But the doctors union said, if we have more doctors, it will destroy our medical system as we know it, even though the majority of their medical system is a for-profit system. And they're the doctors union says, yeah, we're being way overworked. We're doing 36-hour shifts. We're seeing over 100, 120 patients a day, which equates to maybe 3 minutes of seeing a doctor. It's like herding cattle, and it's just boom, stamp, 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 get them out, get them in, get them out. Oh, you need refill, bump, the whole system is efficient, but they're overworked. And yet the doctors union didn't come up with any ways to help with the overburden of work. They didn't mention anything about pay, but they did mention that if having more doctors would destroy the medical system, which doesn't make sense because they just wanted more doctors. They weren't changing the requirements for doctors. They weren't changing the education. They weren't lowering standards. It was just, we want more doctors. Last 27 years, every time the Korean government has wanted to increase the number of doctors, the doctors union has gone on strike, and every time the doctors union has won. The government has always bent their knee, they bowed, and they said, oh, we're sorry. And that's what happened recently. And this went on for over a year. So then the government said, okay, instead of 5,000, we'll go to 3,000, and we'll go to 2,000. And again, the doctors union, no, it's terrible. It'll destroy the medical system, which I don't understand how. It would help with overwork, but I think their medical system needs to be revamped a little bit anyway. We talked about that. I won't go into that. So now, catch you all up on that, the doctor strike is over. Yay! But the problem is that medical school students went on strike at the same time because they're under the influence of the doctors union. They're little puppets. And so how they got the medical school students to go on strike for over a year is beyond me. So there's going to be a gap in the number of doctors just to replace the current doctors that go through attrition. That is going to be backed up for 2 years because you figure they stopped going to medical school. Now they have to redo that year, so that puts them a year behind, and that's going to put everybody behind at least a year or two because now the residents that we have that went on strike are coming back, and they still haven't all come back. They have to redo that residency year. So it's going to take 2 years for this to get resolved and get back to where we were before, which was still overworked. And I swear, the doctors union said, if you increase the amount of doctors, that will reduce the prestige of the current doctors. And that's why we can't have more doctors. It's not about pay. Not once did they say anything about pay, though I think resident doctors should get paid more. But again, it's a for-profit hospital, so you need to deal with them, not the government. So this is getting back to normal is going to be like a 2-year process from what I end up seeing, and just to get back to pre-strike levels. And so now what we're seeing is that appointments have been pushed back 6 to 8 months in certain areas. So yeah, we're doing okay. We're generally healthy, but there is that thing where even my wife's family, her brother had to get some medical work done, and he couldn't find a hospital to get a biopsy. And they were like, hey, you're going to have to come back 2-3 months from now to get the biopsy. And then you have to get the results. And then you'll have to get referred to 2 or 3 months for something that could be cancer. No, that's not acceptable. There's people that we know that are not getting their cancer treatments because the resident doctors aren't there, and they still are not all back. So yeah, you need to look at that, and thankfully we're blessed to be healthy as we are. Knock on wood a bunch of times, but other than that, we've had great medical. So we'll leave it at that. Old-fashioned oatmeal. I'm gonna have oatmeal this morning. That reminds you. Would having an SRV visa from the Philippines negatively impact a Korean residency application? No, it wouldn't. There's no requirement for you to say on your application for a Korean visa that, oh, by the way, I have a visa from the Philippines, or I have a visa from Portugal, or, my Malaysia second home. None of that it comes in or is annotated on your visa applications for here in Korea, for the F1 and the F4 visa, or the F513 visa here in Korea. Matter of fact, I don't think it's a requirement for any visa in Korea. They don't ask, are you a visa holder of some other country? It's just not on there. In our experience, I don't think that's going to change because they don't really care. It doesn't negatively impact your application because most other countries require background check, criminal check, health check, all of those things, income requirements, deposits. You have to be a good person with a good income to retire in an overseas location. And other countries don't care that you have other visas. So yeah, it's totally good. That was a good question because that was the exact same question we had. When I dug into it, it was like, yeah, they don't care. It's like, oh, I thought you could only have one. No, you can have as many as you want. So I was like, hey, I can have a backup plan. So, good question. Good question. And actually, there's people that I know. I ran into a gentleman. What was it, last year? I think it was last year, where this guy had a visa, and I can't remember. He had one for Korea because his wife was Korean, but then he had another one for some other country, and I can't remember which one that was. But yeah, I was like, that's when I started like, oh, you can have more than one visa? And then he said they go back and forth or whatever. I can't remember the country's name. Dang it. What was that? Oh well, not important. For him, yes. For me, no. So anyway, that's what we're looking at. Very interesting stuff, interesting questions. Good conversation today. I appreciate that. This is kind of an outlet for me to be a little bit social on some degree. I like the online stuff that we do and having these conversations and questions and answers and what people think about different topics on retirement overseas, whether it's stateside or Korea or wherever else. Having a backup plan, having a plan for life, because if the biggest thing I found is you don't have a plan for your life, you don't have much of a life. I had people in my own family where they retired and they didn't have a plan, and they just sat around and drank all day, or they sat around and watched TV, and they got bigger and fatter and less active, and then the medical problems came in, and then it's like, towards the end of their life, they're like, everybody says it. I swear, my wife worked at hospice. She did senior assisted living care for a nonprofit organization, and she ran across a number of seniors that did exactly that. And towards the end of their life, they really regretted it. It's like, I worked my whole life and blah, 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 but I didn't spend much time with my family. And so they regretted that. Other people said that I told my wife, I wish we traveled more. I wish I spent more time with my wife when we were retired and we actually went and saw some places, but I was just too stubborn to try anything new or different. And they look back on their life and it's like they really regretted it. And then compared that with the other seniors that she had helped take care of and worked with were those that traveled the world, had been to a ton of different countries. And those seniors had more stories. And those are the people that my wife really enjoyed working with. Were those people that were like, oh, we went to Paris, we went to Asia, we did this, and they had so many memories of them and their spouse during their golden years, and then one of them passed away, but they still had those good memories. And I think that's gold. I think that's gold. But even if you're just single, I think towards the end of your life, and let's say you are in an assisted living facility, you still have the memories of those places that you went to. And so your life is still more fulfilled than if you didn't go anywhere. I don't know. That was just the things that she saw. So that's what we got going on. So something to think about. If you're thinking about retiring, think about the end of life. And I know nobody wants to do that, but the more memories you have, the more good memories that you have, you look back and you're like, hey, remember when we went to Hawaii? Hey, remember when we went to Korea and we did this, or Philippines, or this or that, or whatever. Even if it's just not retiring in an overseas location, but just going and visiting and vacationing. It used to be back in the day, like my grandparents, they retired and it was like, boom, they got the RV, they traveled around the United States, they went to a bunch of places. Of course, they had been to Europe, because during World War II and during that time, they spent that time in Europe, so their whole 8mm movies were all filled with nothing but Europe. And I remember sitting around and seeing those movies time and time again, and then talking with my grandparents. And, oh, yeah, I remember when we went to here and there in Italy and this and that. And, my grandfather passed, and then my grandmother, she had all these great memories of my grandfather, Vinny. And just the light in her eyes that would sparkle again when she would recall those places that they went to together and did those things. I think that's cool. So, Faritha says, for a long time, you didn't really need a plan. Social Security was enough to provide a good life, but nowadays you definitely have to have your ducks in a row. Otherwise, you're very quickly in trouble. And that's true, yeah. And cost of living is going up, and so people are looking for ways to make ends meet. And maybe retiring overseas is one of those ways. Try to get a little bit more out of life than not. So, yeah, some good stuff. Hey, it's Monday here in Korea. It's almost 10 after 8, so we're going to go ahead and call this because I got to get ready. The wife and I are going to go to the gym, get our workout on. Got to go grocery shopping, so we got that going. And the other thing we got going on, we had some toilet trouble. So we're going to get our toilet repaired. It's like 9 years old, and some parts finally wore out. So we're hoping to get that fixed today. And, that's some cool stuff. I'm going to be working on some other PDFs for overseas retirement information. But like I said, the one that I have now is for the Philippines on the Buy Me Coffee page, and that is included in the description box down below. You can click that, which would be awesome. These are the people down here in the scrolling ticker who bought me coffee. I appreciate them, have much respect. But the biggest thing that you all could do, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, please. And if you're already subscribed, awesome. You people are wonderful. Please like the video. We just hit over 250,000 views over the lifetime of my channel. 251,629. Isn't that crazy? So that is going up. And I want to try to continue to grow this channel and put out some good information and share our retirement and have some good discussions like we did today. So yeah, like the channel, appreciate that. And I think that's going to be it. If you got any questions, comments, or you just want to say hi, there's my email address. I answer every single email. So if it's just to say hi, it's about retirement, Korea, other places, hobbies, painting, miniature, 3D printing, whatever it is, I need that interaction. So if you want to email me, don't feel like it's an inconvenience. I get people that send me messages that are like, yeah, I know you went over this in a video, but I can't find it. And I have this question about this, that, or the other thing about Korea. It's no problem at all. It doesn't bother me in the least. So, alrighty. With that being said, Faritha is going to leave us and say, take care, Steve. Have a good Monday, along with everybody else. Enjoy your life and have fun. We'll see you on the next video, all right? Peace. Good stuff. Good stuff. I need coffee.